Seeing none, the chair would like to recognize Representative Donovan. For what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to untable the bill.
Second. Hearing multiple seconds and no objection, this bill now stands untabled. If the clerk would please read the first bill on top of the docket.
A bill to be entitled an Act, Teen Defense Act of 2026, to protect minors aged 16 through 18 by making it legal to conceal a firearm on their person in the state of Missouri, be enacted by the Legislature of the state of Missouri. Section 1. All minors aged 16 through 18 will be eligible to obtain a concealed carry permit. Once said permit is obtained, after necessary training and testing, similar to a driver's license, the minor in question will be completely capable of concealing a firearm on their person legally in Missouri. This bill will not add any restrictions to persons 19 years of age or older, at which age they are eligible to conceal a firearm with no permit. Section 2. Teens shall mean all minors aged 16 through 18. Section 3. Minor shall mean all persons aged 16 through 18. Section 4. Firearm shall mean any gun classified by the ATF as such. Section 5. Concealed in person shall be carried in such a way as to hide the firearm from the view of others. Section 6. This act shall become effective 30 days after approval by the governor or upon its otherwise becoming a law. Section 7. Upon approval by the governor, this bill will be reviewed by the Appropriation Committee for funding. Amendment 1. There will be a mental health evaluation to ensure that the teenager is not going to use the firearm to harm themselves or others.
At this time, the chair would like to remind the body that we tabled the amendment as well, and so there will be continuing discussion on the amendment. This time, the chair would like to recognize Representative in the first row. For what purpose do you rise?
May I take it well?
You may approach well. What's your privilege?
So, I believe that this amendment is very helpful. We need to make sure that we're not letting teenagers that are mentally not able to have guns, that they don't get guns. I'm open for questions.
Gentlemen, please rise and state your point.
Can the clerk please reread Amendment 1?
If the clerk would please read Amendment 1.
2? I meant the table 1. The one that was tabled. No, you did the first one.
There are no pertaining sections. This time, the chair would like to recognize the representative on the third row. For what purpose do you rise?
Will the gentleman on the well yield a question?
Yes, I will.
How do you stop people from taking the test that may be normal, have normal mental state, but act reckless with weapons or anything like that?
Well, I would say that we shouldn't give them weapons because they're untrustworthy, and that we should just make sure that we're giving weapons to those who are mature enough to handle them responsible.
Will you yield further?
Yes, I will.
How do you stop that? Like, how do you stop the people besides mentally ill people?
So this amendment doesn't really say anything about that, so I don't want to speak on behalf of the amendment, but I would say personally that we could add another amendment saying asking for records of the person they have a criminal record to be brought up.
Please rise and state your point.
Is there any evidence pertaining to what kind of guns?
If the clerk would please read Section 4.
Section 4. Firearm shall mean any gun classified by the ATF as such.
Point of information,
Please rise and state your point.
let's please reread the amendment that we are discussing right now.
If the clerk would please read Amendment 1.
Amendment 1. There will be a mental health evaluation to ensure that the teenager is not going to use the firearm to harm themselves or others.
At this time, the chair would like to recognize Representative Jillian. For what purpose do you rise?
Well, the gentleman will yield to a question.
Yes, I will.
So, do you think that, so like Noah was stating, how do we determine who is mentally ill and who is not?
I would say that we should listen to them and have them talk about it, and maybe even some therapists who are experienced in the field of mentally ill, and see what they would have to say.
Will the gentleman further yield?
Yes, I will.
So, like Noah also said, some individuals are perfectly mentally stable, but do have a tendency to be reckless. Do you believe that if we did make a separate amendment on people who were just purely reckless, there wouldn't really be much
yes, I agree with you, but I also believe that there are many young men and women who are responsible and mature enough that they are trustworthy to have firearms concealed.
At this time, the chair would like to recognize the representative in the back row, Representative Jimmy, for purpose of your eyes.
Will the gentleman in the well yield the well for the purpose of moving the previous question?
Yes, I will.
I move the previous question.
Hearing many seconds and a possible objection, if the objector was please rise and state their objection.
I'd like to have a comment to address this.
Hearing that this is a valid objection, we will now be moving on whether or not to move the previous question on this amendment, which requires a 2/3 majority. All in favor of moving the previous question signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. We will now be moving the previous question on this amendment, which states,
Amendment 1, there will be a mental health evaluation to ensure that the teenager is not going to use the firearm to harm themselves or others.
all in favor of attaching this amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Division!
Hearing the motion called, the seeing of the chair does not stand down. This amendment is attached to this piece of legislation. At this time, the chair would like to recognize Representative Gibbs for purpose of your eyes.
I move the previous question.
Hearing multiple seconds and no objection, I will now move the previous question on this piece of legislation, which purpose states.
Purpose, to protect minors aged 16 through 18 by making it legal to conceal a firearm on their person in the state of Missouri.
Along with its attached amendment, which states.
Amendment 1, there will be a mental health evaluation to ensure that the teenager is not going to use the firearm to harm themselves or others.
All in favor of passing this piece of legislation along with its attached amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Hearing called to see that the chair does stand down, we'll now be moving into a process of manual voting. All in favor of passing this piece of legislation signify by standing. First positions. The margin of 24 to 17, this bill does in fact pass.
So when I first arrived here Monday morning, I was definitely a little nervous. But that nervousness was almost completely gone when they had to play the box game, where we go to each other and ask things about them and have them fill out a box in our paper. And that definitely gave me a lot more courage and confidence to talk to people that I normally wouldn't. Throughout this week, I've met with some amazing people through our committees, our prayer walks, and our evening sessions. I was placed into our Crime Prevention Committee, otherwise known as our CPC, where we went over bills each day, and on the first day of our committee, we held an election for chairman and clerk. And at that time, I had no idea what either of those were. But that didn't stop me from trying to step out of my comfort zone, and I ended up running and being elected for chairman. That night, back at my hotel, I tried researching what exactly they do and say, which I ended up finding nothing on. And so Aiden, who's one of our leaders in our committee, he gave me some guidance and he helped me through that, which I'm very much grateful for. And each morning, we do our prayer walks where we walk around the Capitol and each one of us would pray with the Senate, the House of Representatives, the Supreme Court, and our governor. And where we ask God to put a hand on every single one of them and give them guidance over any decisions that they make. And then after the prayer walks, we participate in field experiences to learn more about the branches of government and the impact of lobbyists. Yesterday, we went to the Capitol to talk to lobbyists and learn what they were advocating for. Whether they were private or contract lobbyists, we were supposed to come up with our own questions to ask them. At first, I was definitely nervous because most people were already on calls or talking in small groups. And after walking around for a minute or two and building up the courage, I introduced myself to 2 contract lobbyists. They seemed hesitant to talk to me at first, but after I explained what TeenPact is and what it does, they opened up and had a conversation with us, which I was really happy to find interesting when we talk to people that are really passionate about something and what they're advocating for. And I really enjoy hearing the knowledge that they have and what they stand for. And I've had the opportunity to enter the Senate chamber and witness the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer before attendance was taken. I was very excited and intrigued to watch it all happen, but we had to leave just as it was all getting started. Another field experience we participated in involved being split into groups and assigned different departments, such as public safety and public transportation and so on. We were given a disaster scenario along with a set budget that we had to decide to respond using the resources available. Whatever money we didn't use carried over into the next disaster, which made our decisions even more important. We only had about 3 to 5 minutes to come up with a plan assigned to our certain goals, and then present it to a mock press conference within our group. I had a blast doing this activity and really enjoyed the challenge of thinking quickly and working as a team. Coming into this week, I had no idea what was going to happen, and I've been extremely nervous at times and hesitant to participate. But I've made an effort to be intentional and take action to put myself fully out there. Seeing how God has given me the courage and confidence to rise up and run for governor, and throughout the week, I've loved seeing how much people care about God and how strongly they strive to have a government aligned with His will. From praying over the government together to learning more about our faith, it's been really encouraging to be surrounded by people who share that same passion. And lastly, I'd like to thank Jesus for all that He's done in my life, for placing leadership skills, and for having the ability for people to trust me. I am incredibly grateful for the friendships I've made this week, as they've made this experience even more meaningful, and I'd also like to thank anybody and everybody who voted for me, as well as TeenPact for providing this opportunity.